Now, there's one core principle that I follow in my work that animators use to convey this illusion of life idea, and it's called the squash and stretch principle. If you've studied animation in any way, I'm sure you've heard of it. It basically goes like this. It says that by having your drawing respond to the physics of the world, you can create a sense of motion and therefore a sense of life. Motion is life in the world of animation. So an example of how to convey squash and stretch is to draw a bouncing ball along an arc. And as it moves on that arc, it stretches and distorts its volume and responds to surfaces. So here in the air, at its highest peak, it stays perfectly round. As it falls, it stretches as its velocity changes. When it hits a surface abruptly, it flattens out and then eventually regains its form as it approaches the top of an arc. If we had drawn those circles perfectly round all along that arc, we would have no illusion of life. We would have no sense of motion. The sense of motion also conveys a sense of character. So animators and anybody inspired by animation can apply this principle to the elements of a character design. This is a page from a cartoon book I had as a kid by Preston Blair, who was an animator. And I would look at these drawings over and over again and try to reverse engineer the shapes and forms and sense of motion that each of these drawings were trying to convey. Because if you think about it, anytime you go to draw something, you're really just capturing a snapshot of a movement or a moment in time. If your drawing feels pulled out of a real experience, the drawing will come to life. If the drawing just seems isolated and standing on its own with no context or no hint of a bigger narrative, it's not going to feel alive. So look at this elephant. See the way his body stretches and squashes in all these different aspects of him. His head stretches and squashes. His tummy stretches and squashes. His arms, his trunk, everything is responding to this basic bouncy principle. Now we can apply that principle to the face. Here's another page from the same book. Look at this face. You can see that it's also responding to the squash and stretch principle. So here's where that idea of the mask comes into play. A big part of learning to draw faces or anything is learning to see behind the final art. What are we actually responding to in an illustration? In most cases, it's some really simple forms that inspired the illustrator and gave them some structure to work from. So those masks on the eyes tell the same story as the eyes. See how that shape feels alive if you follow it from left to right? Now, when you look at any pair of eyes, you should see the mask in the forms behind the expression. Here's some concept art from Pinocchio. We can play the same game here. Notice as the expressions get a little more complicated or unbalanced, the mask gets unbalanced. Here's kind of a suspicious, off to the corner looking face. See the way the mask stretches upward? So a fun game to play while you're studying your favorite comic art or cartoon art or animation is find the mask in the facial expression. Now that you understand the squash and stretch principle a little bit better, let's do another expression and create another mask and see if we can really push the expression to the next level.